Welcome to the Black Box of Media, brought to you by Ultimate Edge Communications. I'm your host, Aleisha McCall, and this is Season 3, Episode 11. This is a podcast that lifts the lid on the hidden strategies behind high-performance media advertising. If you've ever wondered why some campaigns take off and others stall, this is where we break it all down. Today, we are joined by the wonderful Bernadette Olivier. She is the founder of the Volte and Seamlist right here in Australia and locally in Perth. We are going to discuss with her the role of founders, the challenges of focus and the reality of scaling a brand without an internal marketing team. Now, these two companies, the Volte and Seamlist, are pushing the circular fashion movement forward in Australia and globally. They're shifting consumer behavior, building trust in new models of value, and doing it all at breakneck speed. This is without a CMO or an internal marketing team on the books. In this episode, we're pulling back the curtain on what it really looks like to build a high-growth brand where the founders are driving the strategy, the creative, the budgets, the performance itself, and what changes when the plan becomes crystal clear, the funnel becomes visible, and every lever is finally working together as one. So let's get into it. Bernadette, it is awesome to have you here today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. No, very excited to be here.
Unreal. Well, look, what we might do, Bernadette, is just kicking off, if you can just give our listeners a bit of a background on the Volte and Seamlist as a brand and what you've been up to, what you've been busy with.
Yes, no rest for the wicked. So my background is that I was a lawyer, predominantly working in financial services, and I was lucky enough to spend an early part of my career at a hedge fund called TPG Axon, which is part of TPG Capital. And through that experience, it was exposed to startups. So this is around 2008, 2009, when the likes of Airbnb and Uber were all scaling. And so I really started to think about ideas for startups when I was on the other side of the table. Now I'm a founder. I really wish I was back on the VC side because it's not as much fun as I anticipated. It is fun, but it's equally challenging.
The life of a founder, right?
Yeah. So careful what you wish for. So I saw the rise of those sharing economy startups. And at the same time, we also were exposed to Rent the Runway, but that was a B2C model like Glam Corner here in Australia, where they own the inventory. And I thought that there was a massive opportunity for the sharing economy model for fashion. And I also had this other idea about the fact that fashion and just consumer products, there was this exploding re-commerce market, but the brands weren't getting any earnings or visibility of re-commerce, even though their products are what created this secondary market. And because I have family members in the music industry, I always wondered why what the music industry has done so successfully with Spotify and streaming and royalties, why that couldn't be applied to consumer products. Mm-hmm. And so moved back to Australia, started talking to brands about the second idea, was politely told no in no uncertain terms, zero chance. It was very hard to be optimistic at that point. And so one of our mentors and friends, Bill Ty, says being early is a lot like being wrong. And that is exactly what it felt like. And so we decided to pursue the rental marketplace to prove that fashion could be income generating for individuals. And so that was the Volte. So we launched the Volte in 2018, raised capital and was going great guns. And then COVID hit. And that was really challenging because our kind of growth was like this.
No one's going out, right? Like who's going to rent a dress to go out? Yeah.
An abrupt stop. And despite what everybody said, no one was renting dresses to go on Zooms. It was not a thing.
Yeah.
It was not a thing at all.
It was not.
But I think in some ways, on reflection, everything happens for a reason. And during that time, we really built out the first kind of iteration of Seamlist, which was integrating with retailers to allow consumers to save their items to rent on the Volte at checkout. And so our first partners were LMA and David Jones. And so when you bought, say, a Zimmermann dress at David Jones, you could save it to your Volte wardrobe in one click and begin earning from it the moment you bought it. And it was so successful. My co-founder, Kelly Hush, was asked to give a keynote at the Rag Trader conference in 2022. And I was there as well. I was not the keynote. They made a mistake. And she gave the keynote and we met the Brooke and Neil from eBay, who were just amazing people. And we connected instantly to them. They saw the potential of what we built. And we just instantly had a rapport, because when you've built something peer-to-peer, you really understand how difficult it is to steer that beast, because the demand side, whether they're buyers or borrowers, expect sort of a B2C level of service, even though you don't ever see the inventory or the product, and you're dealing with people who are incredibly unreliable. So I think there was a shared understanding that we both knew what the friction points were. And then that led to eBay investing and eBay being our largest commercial partner. And along the way, the Vault is still really important part of our company, but Seamlist is just accelerating as we continue to build the infrastructure connecting retail to resale.
Yeah, beautiful. And just to give our listeners a bit of perspective, when we look at the Vault and obviously the rental market being that, at any point in time you can, pop onto the Vault and rent yourself a dress, Seamlist is now really the gateway coming in, so that if you're buying something from, brand new at Q or wherever else, you can literally, upon purchase, list it to resell it later. So you've just bought this $1,000 outfit, let's say, and then you can now confidently go, right, at that point of purchase, not only am I going to wear it 4 or 5 times, I'm now going to justify this, and actually I'm going to resell it later. So if I buy it for $1,000 and then I resell it via Seamlist, on eBay or whoever else later on, I'm actually going to make my money back. And then I can reinvest that into either buying pre-loved or, buying brand new again. So I think, what you guys have created, you described it very humbly, but the what you guys have created and now what you have as a value proposition for both renters, borrowers, and buyers is a fantastic solution to a very big problem.
I think when I think about what our strengths are as a team is because, we really have 3 sets of stakeholders. We have retail brands, we have resale platforms. We're now working with multiple, not just eBay. That's changed in 2026. And then we have consumers. But I think what our team's biggest strengths are, and we have so many, it's hard to lay.
This is true. I mean, roll, get the list. Let's get that long list out.
I think we're very good at making sure that it's intuitive and gives value to the consumer.
Yeah.
So it's not just a pipe connecting retail to resale. You actually have to make sure that it's designed in a way that is intuitive to the consumer, and that consumers trust it and they want to save items to resell later through it. So I think that kind of always being focused on what the consumer wants has been really key.
Yeah, awesome. No, that's fantastic. Okay, so now we're going to get into some of these marketing lessons that you are going to be able to share with us all today to help the founders and the business owners out there on this same journey. Because you've obviously, having run the business since, what was it, 2014 when you founded it?
Oh, it feels like that. 2018.
Okay, 2018. There you go. 2018 that you founded it, and you've obviously had a lot of different marketing efforts going on. And when we met last year, you're very much in that middle period of, okay, I've got a lot of things that have worked. I've got a lot of things that are not working now. When I don't really know what the next step looks like, how do I set that direction and decide what to focus on when there are so many things that need to be done? So can you just talk our audience through sort of, how you've been able to then, just especially in the last 6 months, just kind of consolidate that direction and go, right, these are the things now that are really important for my marketing strategy and my activity in market to ensure that I set myself up for success from the founder's perspective?
Well, I think until we started working with the Ultimate Edge team, one of the biggest risks to our business and something that I was so focused on was marketing. It just seemed really inconsistent. In the early days, everything works, right? Because you're
just crushing it in the early days.
But really in about 2023, it just started to really, I couldn't make sense of it. It just wasn't scaling in the way I anticipated. We just raised a lot of capital. I wasn't getting the returns, and it became really difficult to get to the bottom of it. And I just couldn't understand what was and what wasn't working. And the agencies we were working with at that point weren't really terribly enlightening. And so we moved agencies. on reflection, it was a really silly time to move it because it was right before our busiest period for the vault, it just completely broke our funnel. And I then began to really lose faith in that second agency that we had. So we then, in the end, we turned off marketing because we still had SEO going, but we just weren't getting the returns on paid marketing. And I also wasn't getting the answers. So I think it's different when you know what the problem is, or if you know that you're spending because you're going to get paid back later or whatever it may be. But it felt very wild to me. It felt like a black box. And it was
Pardon the
great
pun.
once we started working with you.
Let's get my drums out.
I know. Yeah, I hit that.
Just
that
nailed it. It's
key
like
word.
serious.
It wasn't until we started working with you that I began to understand really what was happening. And for somebody who has been actively looking at this in depth since we launched in 2018, I think it's designed to be confusing. And I think the kind of dashboards you get from, whether it's Google or Facebook, unless you have a good agency, they're really hard to decipher to really identify what are the key drivers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is and that's the whole part. I think that often what happens is we kind of, go to the gates, you start running, and then all of a sudden things stop working, but you don't actually know why. And because businesses, especially for founders, move so fast, it's actually quite hard to get in and diagnose when you're not actually too sure what you're looking for. So those aspects of setting up those foundations from the beginning and getting really crystal clear on what you're trying to achieve is mission critical. And I think it's like, we always talk about, you have to know the 20% that you need to focus on that's going to get 80% of the result, because otherwise you're just looking at a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't make any sense. So when you look at when sort of the marketing did start to work again, what for you as a key founder, what were the things the signals that you drew confidence in, or the things that you were looking for where you could go, okay, they're the indicators that I know now that things are back on track, that I know I can rest knowing that my marketing engine is actually now working for me?
I've got to be honest, Aleisha, you and your team were the first people to really look at the funnel from top to bottom. Mm-hmm. I think on reflection, the previous agencies were all just doing bottom of funnel marketing. Mm-hmm. And why that was not working for us is in rental, we're building a new consumer behavior. If you don't do top of funnel, you run out of customers at the bottom. And that's actually what had happened. And until you started working with us, I didn't know this. I couldn't work out what was happening. We seemed to be spending an enormous amount on paid marketing and just not getting the returns. But it's because we had run out of bottom of the funnel users. And because we're building the whole marketing has really, over the last few decades, it's really been search driven. It's been keyword driven. Mm-hmm. So unlike if you've built, say, a coffee company, people are Googling coffee. They already know to Google coffee. With fashion rental, we actually have to do a lot of top of the funnel marketing for people to type in rent Zimmerman, rent age, because
you've got to change behavior. That's the challenge.
Behavior. Yeah. And the way Google had set up AdWords at that point, it shifted a little. We couldn't surface for AdWords if you just wrote in age or cocktail dress. We could not surface for those key search terms. So it wasn't until you really explained this all to me that I understood, because mm-hmm. with myself, even though I've been involved, I hadn't really connected that top of funnel to the search volume. And I think that in itself was really enlightening. And I think also the way you explained it, that the 2 months lag, did you top of funnel, otherwise you're going to lag for 2 months, things like that. I feel like I've been asking the questions, but just not getting the answers. So I think that really, once you understand it, then you go, okay, I will or I won't take this risk. I will or I won't spend this capital. I think that's really important. And yeah, I've just learned so much. I mean, there are other things that we've gone through that I can definitely say I learned from Ultimate Edge. So like the kind of, I'm going to say it wrong, but the prep and the prime and the convert. Is that right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. The priming for that, because that was one of the things that we learned. And there's a couple of things in that. So when we were learning, especially when we were starting to understand the way in which your customers actually come through the funnel, there was very much this like priming pre-sale, and it almost got down to an art where it was like, okay, every 5 weeks, we can prime that audience, and then we can hit them with an incentive and hit them with the sales to really help continue to increase those sales month on month, which was really quite unique to your environment of how receptive your audience was to those incentives. And then, we could just see it like we're building up in the month. Then you hit them with that 2-day incentive period. We've done the priming, we've done the education, we've got them to start to fall a little bit more in love with the brand, and then we hit them. And so that was that ability to just really tinker with just one of many strategies to go, okay, that's going to help, uplift the sales to where we need it to be. And then to your point earlier, which I think is where a lot of businesses do get stuck, is when you have been investing very heavily at the bottom of the funnel, there are 2 parts to that, because when you've invested heavily there, it could be that you're just over investing and there's a whole bunch of wastage, or it could be that there's actually some leakages in the funnel and you haven't been able to fully leverage or get the massive benefit from that activity. And so I think what we were learning with you was twofold: was, okay, how do we now at the bottom of the funnel go and fix some of those steps in the sales process to be able to bring more people through and to ultimately get more conversions. But then when we do know that we're at an optimal level, now we can actually go up, invest, get that new audience and bring them through and be rewarded. And so I think with being such a unique business model, we're able to get those learnings relatively quickly and then capitalize on them to turn the marketing engine into sort of like a revenue generating exercise where we're getting that upside month on month. So tell us a little bit more about this circular economy. And I guess really where I want to get into here is the challenge where consumers aren't thinking the way that you need them to think yet. So what you're doing is so new, right? And this is really important from a consumer behavior point of view. You are, as you said, you're early to the party, and now you're trying to shift the way a consumer thinks, especially even at the top of buying something brand new, to think about their clothing as an investment that they can make money from later. So can you tell us about some of the things that have worked in changing that behavior, some of the challenges, some of the things that maybe founders in similar situations would need to think about when they are looking at this overarching marketing system, but very specifically, how do I educate and change a consumer behavior?
I think it's twofold. So I kind of think about Seamlist and the Volte quite separately, but the one thing they both have in common, and again, where we've worked quite closely with you, and I think aside from paid marketing, is in that EDM strategy and that SMS strategy, and learning that a consumer needs to see the message 7 times, 3 different forms of media. That's really powerful once you understand that. We probably spent hours looking at the EDMs, making sure that like the content was engaging, and because some of my team had a background in magazines, maybe too much focused on the content and not on the frequency. And I think that has been a really key learning, because everyone's busy, everyone's glancing at things. People are not in depth staring and dissecting it like they would a magazine, for instance. And because we had that fashion bend, that was probably a mistake. Like we probably put too much emphasis on the content, and instead we're missing
the message.
Instead of the message and how the frequency of that message, which I think when you're building something new has been a game changer. So making sure that those EDM messages pull people through the funnel, that you're hitting them at the right times without being annoying. But and also the power of incentives, particularly to get people to try something new. And I think we've probably always played with incentives, but actually having a really strategic, thought out approach really changed that for us.
And would you mind sharing maybe this most recent campaign that you're doing with Cotton On, of just like the incentives that you're offering for people to try the seamless value proposition? Because I think that's a really great example of, literally minimal budget, so minimal marketing, media, advertising budget, now in a partnership capacity with Cotton On, now changing behaviors and changing the way people think to get them to do something new with the incentive there that's going to drive that.
Yes, so we're doing this really exciting campaign launched last week, which Aleisha and I have called Resell to be rewarded. to get reward.
Yep.
I don't know if Cotton On's taken that.
Resell for rewards. Yeah.
So
But we love it. We love the title. Yeah.
I put it in every deck now. So what's happening is Cotton On is incentivizing their perks database, which is one of the biggest loyalty programs aside from Myer and Qantas in Australia, that if they resell some Cotton On items through Seamlist and they list them on eBay, and in the future it will also include Depop, they are rewarded with a voucher to spend at Cotton On new season inventory. And so why this is so exciting for retailers is it becomes another sort of something in their toolkit to drive
it's another revenue pillar, right? Like it's another revenue generating pillar that they can use in their business that they had not thought about until you guys brought it to the table, right? Like yes, it had kind of been, oh yeah, that would be interesting, but you've brought that value proposition now to the table to enable these retailers across Australia to now unlock a new revenue stream.
Well, and I think it's really exciting because working with so many retailers, it's really clear discounting has eroded a huge amount of margin for retailers, particularly in Australia. I suspect it's global because we've all been trained as consumers, oh, I really like that, but I'll just wait till it goes on sale because we're in this sort of sales cycle, particularly driven by department stores here. And so that discounting has eroded massive margin for all these consumer retailers. And so the idea that you can generate sales by leveraging latent assets that your consumer base has and unlock that consumer spending is really exciting. Plus the fact that it's not leveraging debt, say like a buy now, pay later, you're actually leveraging, a well-made product that probably deserves a second home. You're doing something to really empower circularity and sustainability because, at the heart of the Volt's mission and Seamless mission is really to reduce overconsumption and to keep well-made goods in circulation for longer and not treat our consumer assets like they're disposable. And so even though in some ways you oh, well, this is just getting people to buy more, the real answer here is that we are actually getting people to see that Cotton On is an asset, particularly when you compare it to your Shein or your Temu, that has no value on the secondary market. The secondary market is unforgiving. If it does it, Shein and Temu, you cannot buy. You would be paying postage. That you would not earn from it. Whereas Cotton On, it will hold about 50% of its value, if not more. Some of their high priced, some of their really like important items that sell out really quickly, they'll hold up to 70% of their value.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Which is really exciting, and just seeing the different brands like. It's really amazing. And so like the idea that people are beginning to really see their consumer goods as assets, and also it just makes it an easy decision when you're saying, well, should I buy this from Cotton On or should I buy it from Shein or Temu? Well, it's logical.
Yeah, it reinforces the retailer's value proposition, which I love. So on the topic of hidden assets, B, when we look at this lovely database of yours, last year, and we realised that there is an opportunity for it to be monetized and for it to be leveraged and for value to be created for the consumer to unlock, like what you're saying before, EDM campaigns, SMS campaigns, to reduce the cost of customer acquisition. Because as we discuss a lot, is you really now with media advertising being quite expensive, you really want to just focus on bringing in new customers with your media advertising, especially when budget is quite restricted. It really needs to be focused on bringing new customer acquisition. But when you've done what you've done and you've built this, great database and this very loyal and I think engaged database like what you guys had, can you sort of talk to us about the opportunity to unlock and leverage existing assets in a business? Because I think when we started looking at your database and segmenting it out and going, okay, well, what could we potentially unlock in hidden revenue right now to catapult and create quick wins? What does that actually look like? And now looking back, what's your perspective on leveraging those hidden assets in a business?
Well, I think that was equally important as the paid media strategy was the EDM strategy and leveraging the database, because we do have a really engaged 350,000 monthly active users. We have many people are lenders and borrowers, not just on one side, which is quite unique for a marketplace. Usually, if you're renting a car, it's because you don't own one. So it's that's quite unique. I really think that EDM strategy, what that really drove is it made the business so much stronger because over 50% of our orders started coming from existing customers.
Mhm.
And just from a kind of moat perspective as well as a capital efficiency perspective, that was just so important.
Mhm.
And so when you acquire a new customer, and this is something we spoke about a lot, it's not just acquiring them for that order, it's getting them to order the second, the third, the fourth time and working out what those drivers are. And I think really building out that strategy was just so key because the Vault's now profitable.
Mhm.
It is essentially like a fully developed business. It's running by itself and it's allowed our team to really focus on Seamless. And we were able to do that because we're not as reliant on new customers because we're not churning. So the fact that
Yep.
so many orders
You
come
build
from
the
that
base. Yep.
space is just so important because
Mhm.
otherwise it's a little bit of a Ponzi scheme
Yeah,
for
yeah,
a business.
yeah, and you need that. You need those foundations. I think when and to use your term, the moat. It's like you have to have that base in place to go. Okay, right. This is what we can rely on consistently, and this is what we can build upon. And then, okay, with that in mind, how much new acquisition, do we want to go for each month and each year? Okay, B. So, what about when things don't work? So, what's a campaign that didn't land? Why did it not land? And what are the things that don't work, I guess, teach you about planning, creative, audience, what not to do, that kind of thing.
Um, Look, we've had some mistakes. I'm going to be honest. And look, sometimes it has been just where we haven't had enough control of who's being targeted
Mhm.
and how the ad, like we might have had control of the creative, but we didn't really understand the
Mhm.
audience that it was being shown to. So I suspect, and look, to be honest, I think a lot of our ads prior to you joining, especially in the year before in 2024,
Mhm.
I think we were spending a lot of money for our ads to show people who were just never interested in renting.
Mhm.
So I think that was a huge issue that you've got to pick your audience. There's no point us advertising to 72-year-old men like beautiful dresses for you to wear to your dinner dance. Like that didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So I think that's a real challenge. And I think that really didn't go well. I think also persisting too long when something isn't working, like just I think the best thing about startups is that we are nimble and
Yeah.
can go, you know what, this isn't working. We're out. Um, you
B,
know,
what's your advice on that because it's a great point. What's your advice on that to maybe founders and owners certainly is when do you know it's not working? Like when do you know it's time to move, to adjust, to pivot, that kind of thing? What is it that you look for or you feel in those instances?
look, I think because we were there was an agency just before you, and then there's an agency before that.
Mhm.
And we had a close relationship with them. The reason I wish that we hadn't kind of we just got very frustrated because we
Yeah.
couldn't understand it. And I think when you're a founder, you're not you're not it's a bit like the emperor's new clothes. Like if you don't
Mhm.
get it, if your agency cannot explain it to you and you're not getting the answers you need, that's a sign that you have to hop out. Because
Mhm.
I think we all understand that there is challenges and things don't work, and it's about knowing what they are. And I
Mhm.
think when you can't diagnose the problem, that's when you have to start getting really concerned. And that was probably the thing that was the most obvious to me with both of those private agencies is they couldn't explain to me what was and wasn't working.
Mhm.
I understood the funnel, top of funnel, middle of funnel. I kept saying, why aren't we doing different ads at the top and the bottom and da da da. And I just wasn't getting anywhere and I just kept on going in
Mhm.
loops. So I think sometimes it's less about the results and more about transparency than anything else. And then I also just think you have to you trust your advisor, especially if it's, for instance,
Mhm.
a really high customer acquisition cost at one point, but the plan is to start here and you have a plan and I think you can talk to your advisor and go, okay, well, if we don't hit this, that's a warning sign. We're going to have to pull back.
Yeah.
And I think it's about setting those guardrails in place. But for
Mhm.
me, the biggest thing is if you don't understand it and they can't explain it to you, there's a problem. Like
Yeah.
you should be able to
It's a
understand.
flag, right? That's the flag to go, yeah,
Exactly.
hang on a second, this is not gonna work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes agencies use lingo and things
Mhm.
to avoid kind of accountability. I just think that
Like just
you have
another acronym.
yeah, it's just the FD, blah blah blah.
Yeah, the
Um,
what?
But I think, I think that this isn't my skill set, blah, blah, blah. I think now with the tools that we have, AI, etc., there is no reason why you shouldn't have 100% visibility of and understand your marketing funnel. And if your agency can't explain it to you or doesn't explain the strategy of why they are doing this to get here, then that's the time to move on.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. Now tell me, good segue into when strategy does work. So, talking about the stuff that doesn't work, but when strategy does work. So what changed for you once you sort of had that full funnel plan in place? I know for founders, there are literally 100 plates spinning at any given day, especially when you're in you're in the business, but also when you're going through, capital raises and that kind of thing. It's just there is so much going on. So when you sort of start to go, okay, right, I'm going to begin with the end in mind. I now have this full funnel strategy in place. How did that approach, I guess, of just getting crystal clear on what you needed to achieve, change your approach and change the decisions that you were making as a founder as you went through, and then looking at those feedback loops and going, okay, hang on a second, what else can we adjust here? What else can we unlock?
It really just showed, it was just so transparent and predictable. It was very predictable, and I had never found marketing to be predictable before. It was almost a bit like, fingers crossed. Like,
yeah. Hope is not a strategy, people. Hope is not a strategy.
Fingers crossed this works.
Because we all go, and I think the point here is, from your point of view, especially because just in that founder headspace, is that, a lot of the time, not because we want to, we are acting in a reactive way. And it's like, and I don't know if it's an addiction or what it is, but wanting to do as much as we possibly can, even though that might not be the right thing to do in that moment. And so what is it for you that when you sort of go, okay, I know what it feels like to, not have a clear path and not have a strategy. And then I know what it feels like to have, what does that unlock in a business? Because I think this is like one of the big breakthroughs that, founders and owners can get, especially from your experience of going, right, enough. I don't want to run anymore in this reactive mode. It's too costly. I have to be able to get a clear plan in place that I can now execute upon and feel confident in. How, and what's your take on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. Especially so often I describe being a startup founder like you're in a car race and you're winning, but the whole car's on fire. Like that's how it kind of, even when it's going well, that's how
it's still on
feels.
fire.
Like, oh, I just lost a tire.
The door, not again.
So I think where we're really trying to get to now, now that we've learned a lot, kind of seasoned founders, is setting that plan, getting that strategy in place, so we're not as reactive, and so we really understand what we're doing. We start with the end in mind, reverse engineer it. I think it just makes you feel so much more in control, whereas when you're reactive and you're kind of having to do things on the fly, you often don't really think you don't have the luxury of really analyzing it and learning from the previous like the data. You are kind of just making a lot of decisions based on gut in that moment, but also you're fairly taxed, like, because you're reactive to so many things that sometimes your decisions, it's not, you don't have, I think I'm a lot better intuitively when I have time to think and process and analyze, and things take time for me to fully understand what the right strategy is. Even like over the break, like with Aleisha and your team, we have scaled the vault, and then I took a month, like a few weeks off over January, and just looking at what our tiny team had to do, we decided to kind of pivot and make the vault profitable and to really focus all our growth on Seamlist. But I needed space to make that decision. And when you're kind of running it at everything day to day, it's really hard to get that headspace to actually get that clarity. And over the break, I was able to look at all the data, talk to Kelly, Genevieve, James, key people, and the decision became really obvious. But if you'd asked me 4 weeks before, I wouldn't have been able to say
There's too much going on.
there was too much going
Yeah.
on and there's too much coming at you, and you're kind of scared to make big decisions because you're barely getting enough oxygen. And so I think having that quiet period, particularly if you're doing a business that requires strategy and thought and analysis, is so important. And it's sort of coupled with what we have built in the prior 6 months that allowed us to make that decision. But without that break and without that kind of rest from the kind of reactive mode we had been in, I don't think I would have been able to make that decision. And then what's so funny is then like we circulated it with our board and our investors and our advisors, and everyone's like, obviously.
It's a great decision.
But no, I'm not trying to make me feel bad or anything, but because when you looked at the data, it was obvious, but it did. You needed that space to really get that clarity.
No, I think that's I think that'll resonate a lot with, with many, especially founders and business owners and even marketers, the weight that they're carrying now. I think there's some gold nuggets in that. So we've spoken, a lot about the ongoing challenges around the cost of acquisition, the cost to acquire a customer. And, while we've been able to be very successful in reducing that with, various media advertising activities and, leveraging your first party data within your database, you're also doing something quite unique in the circular economy around that, addressing that very real issue, especially for some of these retailers, of the cost to acquire a customer. So I guess my first part of my question is, what are you seeing in terms of those ongoing challenges, and what kind of solutions are you providing in the circular economy?
I think why Ultimate Edge has been so good is that it is a full marketing strategy that leverages first party data, because a lot of agencies don't. They just focus on paid. And I think that that's problematic in today's landscape, particularly in Australia, where consumer keywords have, because of Shein and Temu, we're the only nation in the world that hasn't imposed any restrictions on them. So they're pouring a limitless budget into our economy, which means that, for instance, the keywords that the Volte was bidding on went up 10 to 20x in 2 years. So the average cost, Shopify has just released for a consumer brand in Australia, the blended cost for customer acquisition is looking at about $331. That's obscene. And that is not what your dashboard's telling you. Yeah. That is the cost.
But that's the true cost when you actually add it up correctly.
So, I think that kind of performance marketing, ignoring brand building, ignoring brand awareness, ignoring top of funnel, I think that those days are most definitely over. I also think that with the rise of AI, I think Meta is becoming less effective. I think just social media as a tool, I think engagement is down. And I just think it's not what it used to be in the way that it was in, say, 2018 when we first launched. So I think leveraging your first party data, knowing your audience, working out what's in your toolkit, which is an Aleisha word I've adopted, with incentives, but also, building community, all of those things are increasingly important. Where this kind of has presented, it's sort of always been around what we're doing with Seamlist, but it's now become really obvious to me in the sense that I think that retailers have really missed a trick, that their product is an advertising channel. And when you actually say it, again, it looks really obvious. Like, I really like your top, Aleisha. You're like, oh, I bought it at Country Road. That is how a lot of consumers are acquired. We just can't measure it. And so I think the obsession with measurement has almost taken us to this strange place where if it's not measured, it doesn't work or it isn't real, when that's completely false. A lot of us actually are acquired by walking by a shop and seeing something in the window. That's not measured. And so I think that that's really interesting. And where I am sort of seeing it with the retail partners we work with is really they need to start seeing re-commerce as an acquisition channel. If Aleisha buys a top from David Jones isn't a great example, but let's say you buy a top from Seed and you list it on Depop. That's an advertisement for Depop. And then, so just if you just think about the listing, that's an advertisement.
That's
Depop
value.
is currently the most visited e-commerce platform in Australia every month since January. So how many people are seeing Seed on Depop because of the listings? And then on top of that, what Seamless does is that we actually give Seed visibility of that. So if Aleisha lifts an item on Seed and I purchase it from Aleisha on Depop, I can then be incentivized to become a primary purchaser. And so what you're really doing is that you are beginning to really see your product as an acquisition channel. And kind of what really kind of is the story that I often tell, but is really sort of, I think, quite a good analogy is my uncle is the lead singer of the Hoodoo Gurus, really big in Australia, also
So good.
strangely really big in Brazil. This was my whole childhood grew up being like Hoodoo Gurus, the Brazilians would really love what's my scene. Like it was sort of weird. And then last year or the year before, he played to 1 million people on Rio Beach. He's 70. I was like, what is going on?
What?
And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
actually asked him, I said, like, why Rio? Like, surely like England, America. So he doesn't. And he said, well, in the 90s, they had 4 or 5 counterfeit CDs in Rio, in Brazil, and one of them was the Hoodoo Gurus. And if you remember, as an elderly millennial, like there used to be all these ads. You wouldn't steal a car, you wouldn't steal a phone. Why would you steal music, like counterfeit
Yeah.
CDs? But what the industry learned through streaming and Spotify and that movement is the CDs were their distribution. Their CDs were their advertising. And it's bloody good advertising because decades later, the Hoodoo Gurus are still playing to 1 million people on Rio Beach. And I think that a
Not
similar
bad.
analogy has to be thought of for consumer products. Your products are an acquisition channel.
Yeah.
Let's just make sure we have the infrastructure so you can leverage that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that story every time you mention it. It's so good. It never gets lost on me. Awesome, B. Well, so look, I want to end with something on sort of leadership and the strategic thinking. If you were sort of giving advice to either a marketing team or founders in a similar position of really setting up the foundations and the mindset to actually get the wins, and what I mean by that is to get the return on investment that you need and deserve from any marketing output that you are going to expend it, right? Because we've spoken a lot about turning marketing into a revenue generating machine, making sure it's a capital investment, not a cost, and then really ensuring that whatever dollar you spend, you get the ROI that you know is achievable from that, whatever that looks like. And so I guess my question to you is just knowing everything that you've been through, the experience that you've had, what is it that you would sort of advise to be the most important things to really ensure that you get your marketing to work hard for you, to make money for you, and that it shouldn't be this cost in the business. It should be a revenue generating machine.
I think it's demystifying it. I think it's understanding that there is it's a logical kind of formula. I think staying close to your data, making sure that you understand who is seeing your ads, how often they're being seen, and not putting too much weight on the dashboards Google or Meta give you, because I can tell you from my experience, they are very wrong. And I think just building a holistic marketing, like not seeing paid marketing as the only marketing. It's paid plus EDMs, plus SMS, plus SEO, plus PR, and just making sure that there's like a holistic strategy. And I think also just getting really, really clear on what are the drivers for your business. Like, what is the driver? Is it new customers? Is it retention? How many? Because I think like something we really discovered was getting those existing customers to transact the second, third, fourth time. That was a lot less capital than acquiring a new customer and ensuring that they have a good journey. So I think also really understanding what are the drivers that I can leverage that will give me that return on investment at a lower cost, and really making sure that you lean into them. I think churn is this invisible thing that so many consumers brands deal with, but aren't really across who they're churning. And I think making sure that you are crystal clear on that is really important, because if you can stop churn, you're going to be having a self-sustaining business, which is kind of where we got to since working with you guys, is that we are able to say the Volt's self-sustaining now because we have so many existing customers who are engaged, who use it frequently, as opposed to having to constantly, which we were in this cycle before, every customer was a new customer. That's a really costly game to be in, like really costly.
Absolutely.
Like if we went back to 2020, I think when we're looking at the data, 2023, 2024, almost 100% of our customers were new. And that was costly. It burnt a lot of
Because you're
capital.
paying for that first transaction value every single time, as opposed to bringing someone on for $100 and then over, 10 purchases, them being worth $1,000 to you in lifetime value. And in itself, just from a compounding asset point of view, is massive upside.
Oh, it's also just when you start looking at the business and the viability of it long term, like we couldn't continue constantly just acquiring. At one stage, one of the data points, we had over 100% of customers are new. I was like, how is that even
How is this happening?
I'm really going, what? Because, obviously some of our borrowers have put in orders that were rejected or declined by the lender. So we had, at one point, 110% of our customers were new. But for me, I think that in terms of building a sustainable business that's viable long term, you cannot get caught up in this constant acquisition loop.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I think it's great advice, and it can be so easy to overlook and not realize that there are, levers that can be pulled on the retention and on the growth side of things once you've actually paid for that, data to get into the system up front. So, B, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been so wonderful to have you on the podcast, and just thank you for being so honest and open with us on the the things that have worked, the things that haven't worked, and the learnings that came from that.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you to Aleisha and her team. No, it's been amazing working with Ultimate Edge. And honestly, I've never worked with a marketing agency like this. So I am not paid by Aleisha to say this, but I do have to say it's been really, really amazing.
You're very welcome. It's been an awesome journey to go on with you guys. Obviously, Bernadette's sister Genevieve is a figure skater, and so Jen and I competed indirectly against each other as figure skaters in our teenage years. We coached alongside each other, and to have the opportunity to reconnect with Jen with all of those wonderful ice skating experiences behind us, and then to be able to meet Bernadette and to be able to work with you directly and just be on this incredible journey that is the Volte and Seamlist, of really turning the story around and achieving some incredible results has been literally what I get up for in the morning. So it's been a very, very rewarding experience.
Ice skaters get it done, right? Ice skaters get it done.
Ice skaters get it done. So there's a few of us floating around. So, and Bernadette, I know you did it. I know you're staying quiet there, but I know you did a bit of figure skating in your time as well. So it's in the blood. It's in the water.
It's in the water, on the ice, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly. We'll find a good metaphor for that soon. Well, look, Bernadette, if people want to reach out to you or maybe ask some more questions, understand more about what you're doing, where is the best place to reach you?
I mean, I'm not great.
Let's be honest. Let's just share this up front, everybody.
So you reach out to me on LinkedIn. If I don't respond, harass me because I am shocking. But it's usually not intentional.
Actually, come to me. I will be.
But no, LinkedIn is probably the best one. Definitely nothing else. I don't check any of the others. LinkedIn I am on, and would love to connect and always happy to help other founders.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Bernadette, for joining us. That was definitely an honest look as what it really and seriously takes to scale to high growth brands in a fast moving category with minimal investment. So I think your example is really about making your media advertising and your marketing work harder for you, and making sure that every dollar in a sense can justify itself and is contributing towards the growth of the business. So ladies and gentlemen, if you got value from this episode, which I'm sure you have, make sure you hit subscribe to the Black Box of Media and leave a review. It helps more founders, marketers and business owners like you access strategies behind high performance marketing and media advertising. If today's episode sparks something for you, make sure you message me on LinkedIn and share your biggest takeaway. You can watch and listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and YouTube for more episodes with real world insights you can put to work straight away. So until next time, keep testing, keep refining, and keep making marketing and media advertising work hard for you. I'll see you in the next episode.